Torga 4 is believed to contain vast deposits of cormalline. Quark brings aboard a shipment of Rigelian flea spiders without an import permit. And Jake Sisko and Enrique Muñez share the same birthday. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today, we are joined by Miss KAITLIN Hopkins, who plays Kilana in today's episode, The Ship. Teleplay by Hans Beimler, story by Pam Wigginton and Rick Kaysen, and directed by our good friend, Miss Kim Friedman. How are you, KAITLIN?
Kim Friedman.
I am so well. Lovely to be here.
Great. This is
Awesome.
It's a fun one, right, Cirroc?
It is a fun one, and I think the Vorta are one of my favorite aliens.
Oh yeah.
I haven't said this before, and I've kind of taken me a while to get to this place where I feel that way. But I like the Vorta. I think they're
good to know.
I like them. They're uniquely positioned in this whole hierarchy, and I like the way they kind of are open about their motivations, at least about trying to improve their own situation and self. Improve.
I like that they're very transparent. There's no
about that. Yeah. And also there's this, you weren't that transparent in this episode, I say. It seems like that was one of the things that was the centerpiece of the episode, was that if there was some communication between you that was an understanding where you believed each other, that the outcome would have been different. So I feel like,
yes.
That was the central tenet that was running across this episode. They wanted the viewer to kind of walk away with thinking about communication. But I want to know about your experience and on this show, and what was it like to play this Vorta?
It was amazing. It was it makes me very nostalgic. And really kind of emotional. It was really important for me. I had been a huge Star Trek fan, as many people, were growing up. I watched that original Star Trek series with my father, who isn't alive anymore, but it was his favorite show. And so my sister and I grew up Star Trek was a huge, huge part of our lives. And so there was some sort of, just personal marker, like to actually be in something that had significantly impacted you, was, just an amazing thing. And I'll never forget, like, going on the audition, what I wore, what time of day it was, where. I remember everything so vividly about that experience and how I prepared for it. It was really a big deal. And then to book it was was like another thing. I was like, oh my God, now I have to do it and be good. Oh, crap. But I felt very fortunate because I didn't know until I got the job that they were sort of still in process with deciding what the character was going to look like, and what her hair was like, and what her costume would be like, and so I had this amazing opportunity to go on the lot and spend numerous times with them trying different ideas on me. I still have some of the Polaroids were a thing then, you guys. Does that? And so, but I saw Polaroids from some of those costume fittings and wig fittings, because they tried a bunch of different stuff before they ended up with ultimately what ended up on the show.
Wow.
And getting fitted for, hand painted lavender contact lenses. Come on, who gets to do that? That's all right. Super fun. But for me, I think one of the things that gosh, how do I even say this? I thought that was one of the best written episodes I had ever seen. not saying that because and I think that Star Trek, the whole Star Trek franchise, I mean, they hire incredible writers, incredible directors. I mean, people who are just so extraordinary at their craft. But I really felt that that episode was so beautifully written and beautifully constructed. Um, and so it was such an honor and a privilege to be able to play that role is how I felt when it was happening because I recognized and also, I mean, look at who my leading man was. Come on. He's like one of the great theater actors and I'm a theater actor, right? Like,
Mm.
nobody does Shakespeare better than him. I mean, he's like unbelievable. And so the whole thing was sort of a surreal experience from start to finish. Um, and I felt, as you mentioned, that the message of the episode was really important,
Right.
and it's still important, and it's still relevant. It's more relevant now, I mean, than
Yeah.
ever. How we perceive things, how different people perceive things, and how we communicate through our differences and through the lens that we perceive things through. Um, so that makes me just proud.
Caitlin, there's definitely a lot more we want to talk about with everything that you're saying so far, but I did want to go back just a little bit when you mentioned that they didn't have the look yet for Kilana totally nailed down. I felt like that's a subtle testament to you as an actor that means they cast you based on your performance in the audition more so than your type or your look. If they didn't have the look nailed down, otherwise they just know what they're looking for and then they just pick
Yeah.
between the 3 or 4 people that look like that. But if that
Yeah.
means your performance was the key, what they wanted. And I was
Oh.
wondering, did they give you any kind of coaching or any foreknowledge as to the type of characters these Vorta are? Because they're a very specific kind of alien.
No, so that was what was so interesting about that the audition process, actually.
Mhm.
It was very clear when I went into audition after I did the scene. I remember the people in the room sort of looking at each other, and I was like, "Okay, I just did something good. I don't know what I did. I had no idea what I did. Hold up, did something good," because they're all looking at each other like, "Oh, did we just find the answer to our problem?" And I was like, "Oh God, I hope I'm the answer to their problem." and and what was sort of interesting about it was I remember them. I don't remember exactly all the questions that they asked me, but we had a conversation. They wanted to know how I made the choices I made. Like, why had I made the choices I made? And I
Oh,
thought that was really cool because that's unusual. Like, usually they give you notes. Usually they say, "Oh, that was great. Can you try it this way?" Or keep everything the same, but can you change your intention on this line? That's usually what happens in an audition, right? And they say, could you, how did you come to that decision? Why did you make the choice you made? And I was really excited to talk about that because I remember when I worked on the scene, um, my stepfather was a screenwriter and a television writer. And I remember showing him the sides they gave me. I'm like, "Dad, you gotta check out this dialogue, man. It's brilliant." And I remember feeling just instinctively that one of the things that was important was the manipulation
mhm.
between these two, right? That we were manipulating each other. And I thought, and I remember just reading it on the page thinking, this woman's really clever. She's really smart. And this is a negotiation. Well, who wins negotiations? Like that, I remember asking that, like thinking that in my mind and thinking, well, if this is a negotiation when somebody has to win this, what do I have at my disposal that makes me the better competitor to win this battle, right?
Mhm.
And I thought, well, I've got my looks, I've got my body, I've got and I've got my intelligence, and I've got my ability to read people. And I
Right.
thought she's somebody who must read people well, and you don't do that unless you listen well. And I remember saying to the producers, I felt that she was somebody who had to listen well in order to know what tactic to take next. You you manipulate people through different tactics, but you can't know what tactic to use until you understand your adversary. So I remember talking about, as the character, wanting to assess my adversary and get a read on him, read the room, so to speak,
Mm.
and then make my choices based on that. And then waiting to see if they worked or not. And if they didn't work, I would then, because she clearly was intelligent, I would try a different tactic, which again is about observing
Mhm.
physical, tells, right? And I remember talking to them about poker, random, but I was like, it's kind of like, to me, it was like a game of chess or poker. That's the way the episode read to me. And I said, it made me want to play it like a chess match, to play it like a really good game of poker, where what you're doing is reading the other person and you're making sure that they can't read you. Right?
This is very good. This
Yeah.
is very interesting. What do you think,
Or
Sarah?
or alternatively, you're deliberately showing them something,
Right.
right, on purpose, which was very much a choice on my part. I was like, I want him to think this. So in essence, that's my poker face, right? Is that like I'm leading him to believe something that actually isn't true because I think it'll manipulate him. I think I'll win that way. Checkmate. Right? And it was one of the great chess games of all time in a Star Trek episode. That's why I think it was so brilliantly written.
Mhm. It's really interesting.
Who won the chess game? It was checkmate, right? Like
Mhm.
nobody won that.
It's true.
Nobody.
Yeah, that was it was a draw. Yeah.
Stalemate then.
I look at it and I'm
Stalemate.
thinking of what the producers were watching as as you're describing your auditioning process, and I'm thinking that the same thing. I'm thinking, trying to put myself in their shoes, and what I would have been blown away by was how you approached it in a similar way to how the Vorta are known for being, which is this kind of witty and charming, likable villains. Like
Right.
there's something very likable about the Vorta. Like you don't instantly hate them and just turn off about them. They're not disgusting. They're not rude.
Right.
They're actually endearing in some type of sneaky kind of maniacal way.
It's interesting you say that because, I also, my sort of, my history and things I had done prior to that, right? I'd done a lot of theater. And I was starting to make my way in film and television, but I'd done a lot of Noel Coward. And I was always the femme fatale or the villain. I'd done a lot of Noel Coward, a lot of Shaw. And that's very, very, very witty, complex dialogue where the femme fatale and the villain is, I mean, you're using language. Um, and those were a lot of the roles I had played in the theater were British comedies, British farce.
Mm.
The thing I love about villains is that if there's joy in that, if you enjoy that repartee and that skill, right? Like to me, that's fun. If you're playing somebody evil and mean, that's not nearly as interesting to me. But also, again, I was playing opposite one of the great Shakespearean actors, and in for me, because my dad was a writer and my mom was an actress. I don't know if you guys know, my mom was Shirley Knight,
Mm.
and so growing up in show business and growing up with people who were in the industry, my father was a huge Shakespeare fan, and when we were growing up watching Star Trek, he always said the reason that he loved it was because it was mirroring great Shakespeare, in terms of the nature of the storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Um, And so I think I approached it that way. Like, I didn't approach it like I was playing an alien. To me, it was a Shakespearean,
Right.
right? The stakes were that high. There was that much at stake. It was life and death. Um, there was a great battle scene, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I think the language in Star Trek has always been very elevated.
Right. A
Right?
lot of almost all of the alien actors and character actors that played aliens are classically trained and are Shakespearean. And
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of that's what the producers are looking for, and just the fact that these Shakespearean actors, you can put them in a situation and they can get in the headspace of whatever this character is, whether it's an alien, whether it's, just an interesting person that has, that's eccentric or something like that. And as Cirroc said, your dissection of this character and the way you guessed was the correct way to deliver this character is a description of what these aliens are like. So I think that's probably why the producers were like, she's nailing it, is because you were acting like a Vorta and you picked up on that from, studying the script.
Yeah. And I went to RADA in London. I studied at the Royal Academy, and I mean, I was a Shakespearean actress myself. Um, but that process where I got to, they sort of built all these different costumes on me, and I mean, I probably went on the lot maybe 4 or 5 times over months,
Mm.
right? Where they would try one wig and they'd be like, let's, fix," one of them was, like, really long. One of them was much more severe. It wasn't as soft, and I was like, "Oh, it feels a little severe," you know? And one of the costumes sort of had a big train on the back of it. I remember that, and they were sort of I w wanting to find a balance between strength, vulnerability, and sexy.
Yeah.
'Cause those were conversations that we were having, and they were
Right.
showing me
Yeah.
articles. They were showing me, like, once I got the job, they were letting me have access and talking to me about, the past Vortas and, what they were trying to do with this Vorta, and they were trying to sort of, like, I don't know, think about it differently and have this Vorta sort of presented in a new way or a different way. I don't know how new or different it was, but, I know that they were exploring, that, or like you said, they would have had a set costume
Hmm.
and wig already, and that was really fun.
Well, it was a perfect transition. I mean, Cirroc and I've seen a few different Vortas now, or Vorta is maybe the plural of Vorta. I don't know. And it was right, Cirroc. I mean, like it was a seamless transition into a new Vorta character, but one that had her own style. Obviously, they're not homogenous. You had your own style, your own delivery, your own ways of manipulation, your ways of getting to the strategy. Basically, they're like a mix between diplomats and like war generals, somewhere in there, very calculated, very intelligent, very diplomatic.
I was also interested, and I remember talking to the director about this, of who did they want to have the status in the relationship, and if we both had high status, when did it shift? Does it shift? Does that make sense? Like, is he higher status? Am I higher status? Are we also competing on that level? We're not just competing for the ship or what the heck's in the ship, right? It's like who has the highest status in this relationship, and
What
if
was
it
Kim's answer to that?
changes it. Um, she talked about being peers and equals in it,
Hmm.
and that it would shift naturally as one of us won a point,
Hmm.
because there were wins along the way, right? Each character had different moments, I think, that were
I would say so. Yeah. What I would say that you entered into the equation with the upper hand because
Well,
you were aware of Sisko. You brought up his son. You said,
Mhm.
yeah. So you had more knowledge about him. You knew who he was and what he's about, and he had no idea who you were. You're like, so he's having to gauge and learn about you where you had the upper hand. The other part that you had the upper hand is you knew what was on the ship that you were after, and he still had to
sure,
figure it out.
I had a huge advantage in
Right,
that.
right.
Then
But
you
I
had,
do want to give you amazing.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I want to give you credit, um, Caitlin, because of how you handled yourself in the scenes with Avery. I thought you were completely independent, strong, and I mean, just held your own in those chess moments with Sisko.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there was especially a moment, and this kind of harkens back to when you said you didn't know exactly what you did in that auditioning process that made them, really catch attention. But when you said that, my first thought was, I think it was when your demeanor changed at the moment where you're saying, "Oh, we're reaching an impasse," and Sisko says, "We're already there," and then you're just like, "Okay, then you're fucked," or whatever he said, and it was just like
I
a
was like,
completely different. And
Yeah.
you like flipped a switch, and that was your way again of that character establishing dominance, saying, "Okay, I'm going to try to win at the negotiation. Okay, that doesn't work. Then I'm going to try to win at the upper
Manipulation.
hand." Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. It was very hot. We were in a desert.
Yeah.
I just want to say, all these years later, I've not forgotten.
Do you remember where? Do you remember where in the desert it was?
I remember I had to get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning and drive in the middle of freaking nowhere desert. And, it took like 4 hours to get me into all that nonsense, right? The ears, your neck, everything. And they were
Yeah.
spray painting me lavender and, and they got to put the boobies in. I mean, like it was a whole process. It was, I'm not kidding. I think it was 120 degrees that day in
Oh
the
no.
desert, and the ship was metal.
Oh
And
my
we were
God.
standing on that ship, and I was like, "Thank you, dear God, that I put sunscreen on this morning." It was literally, how when you're in like that kind of heat and it like wafts up at you, it just
Yeah.
like hits you in the
Yeah.
face. I'm astounded that my ears didn't melt, like that any of the prosthetics stayed on my face. But this will make you guys laugh. So the
Oh,
gentleman,
actually, sorry, I just realized we've got to take our break right now, and that's a great tease because there's an amazing story that's about to happen, everybody. So stay tuned. We'll be right back on on the seventh rule.